This is what we're building today. I'm calling it a garden bench, but I also think it would look great in the home. It's made of Sepele. It has tapered legs, a little bead molding detail at the bottom. It's a pretty simple project that you can definitely finish in one weekend. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using some old lumber for this project, so I'll need to mill it down to size. But if you're going to build the bench, use 3/4 inch material for the top and apron and 8/4 material for the legs. After milling the material down to 3/4 inch, I'll rip the boards for the apron and center support to 5 inches. Earlier this morning, I glued up the legs using Titebond 3 wood glue. And now I'll take them out of the clamps and mill them down to 1 3/4 inch square. Before running these over the jointer, I'll use a chisel to remove most of the wood glue. I've set the fence at 1 3/4 inch and I'll square up the legs. After squaring up one side of each leg, I'll set up a stop block and cut the legs at 16 1/4. Now I've got the legs squared up at 1 3/4 inch and I've cut the legs to length at 16 1/4. I'm using a tapering jig to add a taper to the outside of the legs. I've got my stop set. The bottom of the tapering jig is set at 1, and at the top I'm at 1 3/4 inch. Okay, now I've got the legs cut to size and tapered, and I'll move back to the apron. These are the two long parts of the apron for the bench. This is one of the short aprons, and then this piece here, I'll get a short apron and a cross brace. So next I'll go ahead and cut the short apron to a rough length. Now that I have all 4 parts of the apron cut to a rough length, I'll use a bead molding bit in the router to put a slight detail at the bottom of the apron. After squaring up one side, I've set up a stop block and I'll cut the short aprons at 9 1/2. I've readjusted the stop block, and now I'll cut the long aprons at 39 1/2. With the parts cut, the next step is to drill the pocket holes for the pocket hole screws, and I'll measure from each side on the short aprons and make a mark at 1 3/8 inch. On the back of the long aprons, I'll measure in 1 inch on each side and make reference mark for drilling the pocket holes. By staggering the marks like this, the screws won't meet in the leg. Now I've got the pocket holes drilled in the aprons, and I've attached one of the short aprons to the legs. I'm using a piece of 1/4 inch plywood as a shim or a guide, and if the 1/4 inch plywood is flush with the back of the leg, then I know the apron is in the correct position, and I can attach the apron to the leg with the pocket hole screws. And I'll use the shim to make sure I'm in the right position flush with the top of the leg. And this is a new clamp. This is by Craig. I just picked it up at the lumberyard the other day, and it takes a little getting used to, but it's pretty good. Everything looks good. Flush at the top. And now I don't need a clamp because the screw is the clamp. Okay, well now that I have the bench assembled, I'll take a measurement in the center and cut the brace to length. Now I can test the fit at the edge, and that's pretty good. It's a little loose, but that'll be fine. And I'll move it out to the center and attach it to the apron with 2 pocket hole screws on each side. Before getting started on the top, I'll seal the base with 1 coat of Total Boat's Danish teak oil. After building the bench yesterday, I gave it a quick sanding and then a coat of Danish teak oil just because I wanted to seal the wood, especially the end grain at the top of the legs before I attach the top. The top is made up of 2 1x6s, 1 on each side, and a 1x4 in the center. And the next step is to cut the boards to length. After cutting the boards to length, I'll measure and mark to pre-drill and countersink holes for the screws. Now that I have the holes drilled, I'll use a roundover bit in the router to add a slight roundover at the top and bottom of each board. I'll use clamps to hold the boards in place and attach them to the apron with 1.5" exterior screws. To avoid splitting the wood or breaking a screw, I'm drilling 3/32 of an inch pilot holes into the apron for each screw. Okay, well, I am really happy with the way this project turned out. Definitely a very simple build. So if you build it, please share it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to see what you made. At the moment, I don't have plans for this, but I will in the next week or 2. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'll let you know exactly when those plans are available. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.